From fitness routines to mental resilience, navigating personal goals to tackling burnout, we could all use a little help being human. And that is what the Life Kit podcast from NPR is here to do. As I'm sure you've noticed, life does not come with a manual, but you still have to make choices every day, some big, some small, and these shape the direction of your life. Well, Life Kit delivers strategies to help you make meaningful, sustainable change. I personally am still in summer mode over here, and lately Life Kit has been really delivering with advice on how to improve your grilling or make a salad for your next picnic, how to beat the heat on a humid day. Ice towels, people, ice towels, they really make a huge difference. But of course, even when you are in summer mode, life still presents much thornier issues, and Life Kit has recently done episodes on preparing your home for possible flooding, staying out of credit card debt, making hard decisions together with your spouse. I promise, if you go to the Life Kit feed and take a scroll through the topics, you will find something that will help with a dilemma in your life. So go ahead and check it out. Listen now to the Life Kit podcast from NPR. Hey there, Jody here from This Day headquarters. We are taking our usual late summer break, so for the next couple weeks we are bringing you some favorites from the archives. Maybe you've heard them before, maybe you haven't. Either way, we think these are worth spending some time with, and thanks to everyone who subscribes to our newsletter who helped vote on which episodes to rerun. This is a gentle reminder to subscribe to the newsletter. Also spread the word about the show to someone, leave a review, get in touch with an idea for an episode at thisdaypod.com, and most importantly, enjoy the last few weeks of summer. All right, here we go. Hello and welcome to This Day in Esoteric Political History from Radiotopia. My name is Jody Abergan. This day, August 26th, 1814. Let's travel to the town of Brookeville, Maryland. It's about 12 or 15 miles north of Washington, D.C. On this day, Brookeville consists of about 15 houses, a tannery, a blacksmith, a store, several mills, a nice little town. And also on this day, it is the capital of the United States of America. That is right. On the night of August 26th, James Madison, President of the United States, came through Brookeville as he was fleeing a burning Washington, D.C. He spent the night, then kept it moving the next day, but that night spent in Brookeville was apparently enough to make Brookeville the U.S. capital for a day. I will just say this is maybe not surprising, but the first thing you see when you look up Brookeville, Maryland online, there is a plaque. The city is very proud of it. And we also have gotten emails from listeners about it. So a shout out to Anna Perez-Lapore, who clued us into this story of Brookeville. Here to discuss, as always, are Nicole Hammer of Columbia and Kellie Carter-Jackson of Wellesley. Hello there.
Hello, Jody.
Hey there.
Have either of you been to Brookeville? You don't have to spend the night. Have either of you been to Brookeville?
I haven't,
No.
and I'm going to have to rectify that, it seems.
Yeah, go see the plaque. And it's in Montgomery County, Maryland, not too far from where I went to lived during high school and so forth. So I must have gone through Brookeville at some point, but I certainly did not know this history. Before we get to Brookeville, I also want to say that we're going to do also on this day at the end of this episode, and maybe take a little longer than usual with that, because we got a great email from a listener about another event on this day in 1970, a bombing at the University of Wisconsin. Super interesting. So we're going to just mash those up, Brookeville, and then the University of Wisconsin bombing. And I guess maybe the theme is a little bit buildings burning. That's a little, so.
I mean, I guess.
It's a bit of a reach. But nonetheless, this story of Brookeville, though, Niki, does have to do with the fact that the Capitol was burning. So I suppose this is our way to talk about a couple days earlier, the capital of the United States is on fire, which is why James Madison is on the run. Why is the capital of the United States on fire, and why is James Madison heading north?
Because the United States is not doing well in the War of 1812. The British have sacked the nation's capital. They've started burning down buildings. You have to think, like, the United States at this point is maybe 25 years old or so, and the capital is burning, and the president is fleeing. Things have to look
not great, Bob.
Grim. Exactly. I think that was the refrain that they used all the way to Brookeville. And what must have been like a kind of desperate flight, and fascinating for a generation that lived through the Revolutionary War, to see it all kind of crumbling down around them.
Yeah. I mean, James Madison and his wife Dolly pretty much grab everything that they can. Dolly Madison grabs a portrait of George Washington off the wall, trying in an attempt to sort of save some of the historical memorabilia of the White House and of the Capitol. But basically, they have to get out of Dodge quickly. And they first head south and then realize when there are British troops there and it's not a good place for them to stay, they head north and make their way all the way up to Brookeville.
So we should make a shout out to somebody named Paul Jennings, who was a 15-year-old enslaved boy who Dolly Madison, I guess, technically saved the portrait by having him do all of the work of saving the portrait. So he's a part of that story.
Yeah, that's a special note. Thanks.
And so there's this like notion of where are the troops getting intel and then moving in the opposite direction. And so they make their way on this night of August 26th. The president's carriage rolls into Brookeville in search of a place to sleep. And this is where it gets slightly apocryphal, but also very awesome, because there are stories that the first two doors they knocked on said, no thanks, no room. You can't stay here.
It's very Christmas Eve, isn't it?
Yeah.
No room at the inn for the President of the United States.
Should have used Hotel Tonight or something. Yeah, sure.
No, I think it's just kind of funny that one of the first houses they go by is a man by the name of Mr. James Pleasant, which is funny because he's not very pleasant. He's kind of known as being the town curmudgeon, and also having, failed efforts to try to build a flying machine in some way. But yeah, he pretty much rebuffs them, and they have to go to the next neighbor, to the next townsperson to figure out where to stay.
Yeah, and so that person, again, a lot of this is a bit apocryphal, but by some reports, a man by the name of Richard Thomas, who reportedly said he was a Quaker and a pacifist and didn't want to take in a wartime president to stay with him. And then maybe his wife reportedly said, you're not coming in here with those muddy boots. I think
that's where we're really tilting into the apocryphal.
Look, why not? This isn't on the plaque, but it's in the podcast.
We can assume.
Yeah. There is a much more mundane story that's been attached to that, which is that the house was full, not a lot of extra beds laying around, and they didn't actually know that the president was with the party, which might have been a decider for some people to maybe give up their beds, but doesn't happen.
Yeah. But anyway, they do eventually find the house of Caleb and Henrietta Bentley, which is now known as the Madison House, as you would expect. They get a room for a night. One other interesting tidbit to me here is that they don't really sleep. Reportedly, I guess it's wartime, but they stay up all night, and Madison sort of sits in a rocking chair all night, sort of plotting and scheming, and that chair, of course, becomes legendary, famous, and a big family heirloom. But they don't even get some shut eye.
You can't even put up a plaque
even
that
during
says
the war.
Yeah, you can't even put up a plaque that says Madison slept here.
Yeah, it's like Madison had a fitful night of rocking in the chair in this town. Yes. So look. The big question for me here is, why is it that Brookeville gets to call itself U.S. Capitol for a day? Well, first off, a day. I mean, it's like 9 hours overnight. And technically encompassing 2 days, Brookeville, whatever. We'll give it to you. But why does the Capitol of the United States travel with the President of the United States?
Typically not. Wilmington doesn't become the capital of the United States every time Joe Biden takes the Amtrak home. But in this case, because the capital had been sacked and the capital, Washington, D.C. was not a place the president could safely be, I think in that instance, it becomes the capital.
And also he's conducting governmental business. So he's, sending out letters and trying to get information out as much as he possibly can. And so the notion that it's not just like he's, on a vacation or taking a place to leave, or a place to go to sleep. He's using this as a place to conduct the business of the war.
It's the seat of government when the real former seat of government is not available.
Yeah. And I think that especially in early days, that notion of where is the brain trust and where are they conducting the business of government, that is effectively the capital. And often during war and conflict, that gets shifted around. Obviously, during the Civil War, there were a number of different capitals for the Confederacy. But, at different moments. I mean, everyone knows that Philly was, the capital of the United States, but like New York, Pennsylvania, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Baltimore, Annapolis, Princeton, Trenton, like all get these claims to being like, this is where the seat of power was. And then like I've been to Kingston, New York a bunch, and Kingston is very proud of the fact that for like a year it was the capital of New York State. You get these moments often. I think that was during the War of 1812 as well. Often during war and sort of instability, you get this seat of power moving. But anyway, they wake up the next morning, or the sun rises. They maybe have not slept, and
the rooster crows.
Right, exactly. And they move on. And I mean, an interesting tidbit here is that they kind of receive word that the British had left Washington and were starting to make a move towards Baltimore and Fort McHenry, which is where the Star-Spangled Banner gets written. That's the battle for that. But the president just returns to a burned out Washington, D.C., and that, again, is the capital. Okay, so, Niki, you didn't like my hacky saying that these were connected by buildings burning, but you also mentioned that this was a story of a sort of failed, chaotic war effort with the War of 1812. Well, our next story in 1970 at the University of Wisconsin also related to a failed, chaotic war effort.
Communication is critical to your success in your personal and professional life. I'm Matt Abrahams, and I teach strategic communication at Stanford Graduate School of Business, and I host Think Fast, Talk Smart, the podcast. I sit down with experts to discuss actionable advice that you can immediately apply to your life. We cover topics like managing communication anxiety, speaking better in the moment, maximizing your influence, and how to negotiate to get what you want and need. Listen wherever you get your podcasts to level up your communication.
As summer winds down, I'm all about refreshing my wardrobe with staple pieces for the season ahead. And Quince nails it with luxe essentials that feel effortless and look polished, perfect for layering and mixing. I recently went and picked out a couple pairs of slacks, a light jacket, because that crisp fall air will be here before we know it. And then I was looking around the Quince website and I noticed a section I hadn't seen before: kids. I'm not sure if this applies to you, but oh my gosh, my kid is going back to school soon. And not only that, they grew over the summer. That always kind of sneaks up on me. Well, luckily, Quince has stylish and affordable kids' clothes, so I quickly snagged a linen overshirt, a pair of kids' jeans, and even some new running pants. They also have kids' backpacks, by the way, just a tip. So, whether for you or whoever, elevate your fall wardrobe essentials with Quince. Go to quince.com/thisday for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/thisday to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/thisday. So this story, we just got clued into this by a listener, Chris Juswick, so thank you, Chris, for suggesting this. But let's just switch gears here. This is actually August 24th, 1970. At 3:42 a.m., a bomb tears through a wing at Sterling Hall at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. This bomb resulted in the death of a researcher, Robert Fastnacht, I believe is how you pronounce his last name, and injured 3 others, and caused significant destruction to the physics department and its equipment. I think at the University of Wisconsin and in Madison, the Sterling Hall bombing is like pretty well known. But, for a lot of us, for me, I kind of don't think I'd heard of this story, but now you look at pictures. This is a massive bombing, and it blows out a huge building on campus. So, I do think it's important to spend a little time here. This is obviously in the context of the Vietnam War. But Kellie, what else jumps out at you about this story?
So I think we forget how many of the demonstrations that took place all across the country, all across student campuses, and also we forget how violent they are. Most of us will think of Kent or Kent State when 4 students were killed by National Guard soldiers. But what's happening at UW is insane, because for a 2-year period, there are either, violent attacks or bomb threats or actual bombs, all intended to create a sense of backlash about the Vietnam War. And companies such as Dow Chemicals that were using college campuses to recruit new hires for their company are coming under fire for their connection to napalm and a lot of these really toxic chemicals that are being used during the Vietnam War. So a lot of professors are also, doing teach-ins and letting their students know what's happening, and their students are not okay with the complicity that the university has.
I think that idea of the universities being complicit is really important because when people talk about the student protests of the 1960s, they focused on universities because that's where the students are and that's where the radicals are. But the universities themselves were part of the military-industrial complex, right? The building that they were blowing up was called the Army Mathematics Research Center, because that's where the military was conducting research, just as the Manhattan Project unfolds at Columbia University back in the 1940s. So it's not just that you have these student activists gathered in this one place, and that's why universities are sites of protest. Universities are implicated in the war effort.
Yeah. So the group that bombed this building at Sterling Hall, had been an sort of an activist group on campus for a number of years. They had actually previously tried to do a plot in 1969 where they tried to steal a small plane and drop homemade explosives on a ammunition plant nearby, which is just, a wild Rinko as well.
Yeah.
And here, they drive this truck bomb up to Sterling Hall and it explodes early in the morning. There are people there, though, and it does kill one person and injure a number of other people, $13 million or so in property damage. And, briefly, I think that we've talked about the sort of the violence in this era, the violence in the protest. And I think it's important to spend some time just reflecting on the way in which I think this really changed the nature of protest at University of Wisconsin, but also nationwide and a bunch. And I think you hear from time to time from people who were involved in the Vietnam War effort, there's these seminal moments where they just have to pause and think and reevaluate or double down. And when you read the sort of oral histories of this moment and reflections on this moment, it just clearly was this massive moment for the anti-war effort in Wisconsin. That was really formative for a lot of people who were, at this point in their early 20s.
And it's a reminder that the violence of war doesn't just take place on the battlefield, that it spills over into all of these other parts of a country and all different parts of a society, because this is part of the violence of the Vietnam War, are these protests.
Yeah, so I want to read a couple of reflections from a great oral history that the site called On Wisconsin did of this event, and they spoke to a number of people who were involved in these groups and were on campus at the time. But, a woman named Barbara Van Horn said, "I was proud to be part of a community raising hell about the lies and destruction of the Vietnam War. It was disheartening to learn that bad policy cannot easily be changed by the people, but the bombing made me feel ashamed. The righteous became as tarnished as the government in this act." But William Draves, who was also on campus at the same time, said, "The bombing put a guilt trip on a whole generation. One person, yes, I remember his name, his wife, his young children, was accidentally killed by our side as we advocated for peace, but our side saved countless American and Vietnam lives by stopping the war." And one other person who was part of that oral history sort of said, "I've always viewed the accidental death in this as part of the death toll of the Vietnam War." It's sort of, Niki, what you were getting at. And this was part of a large anti-war action that was taking place across the country. One death is a tragedy, but it is part of a larger story of the Vietnam War. So, clearly this very impactful event. And we should say that if you want to go and read a little bit more about Carl Armstrong, who was one of the sort of leaders of this, ends up being arrested, and there's a really fascinating trial. But we wanted to kind of spend a few minutes just talking about that Sterling Hall bombing, mostly because we got a great email about it, asking us to touch on it. So we will leave it there, a little twofer there. But Nicole Hemmer, thanks to you as always for doing this.
Thanks, Jody.
And Kellie Carter-Jackson, thanks to you.
Sure.
And of course, everyone, please keep sending us. That's the real connective tissue here. Both of these were inspired by emails from listeners. That is really the big takeaway. Keep sending us ideas. We really love it when we get suggestions, and often stuff we did not think of. This Day in Esoteric Political History is a proud member of Radiotopia from PRX, a network of independent, listener-supported, artist-owned podcasts. Our researcher and producer is Jacob Feldman. Our producer is Brittany Brown. You can get in touch with us with any questions or comments or ideas for the show. Email us thisdaypod@gmail.com, or you can find a form at thisdaypod.com. My name is Jody Avirgan. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you soon.
Most of us were horrified that somebody had been killed. Most of us were horrified that a building had been blown up. And the one thing we were puzzled about was who on earth did we know who might have done that?
The UW Board of Regents today pledged a $100,000 reward for any information which leads to the conviction of those who bombed the Army Mathematics Research Center.
Radiotopia. From